This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all to subscribe to the podcast so you always get those alerts and notifications on your phone, on your laptop, on whatever device you may be listening to this on. Again, you want to subscribe to the podcast on whatever application or website you're listening to this episode on, so you always get those alerts and notifications on those devices, and you know when we drop a new episode here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you can get those alerts and notifications, and you can be one of the first people to listen to a new episode of the podcast when we release it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. Also, don't forget to leave a 5-star review or just a positive review in general. It would leave us, it would give us, a great boost of confidence, letting us know that you guys are enjoying the content that we are producing here and also enjoying the discussion points, the topics, the points, whatever it is that you're enjoying. Just let us know that you're enjoying it with a 5-star review or just a positive review in general on that same podcasting app or website. We would really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can find us. We would love to interact with you guys more on there. We can talk about sports. We can talk about the show. We can talk about really whatever you guys want, but we'd love to interact with you guys more, especially on social media. So make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That is where you can find us on those social media platforms. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy and healthy during these trying times in the world today. We have a fantastic show for you all today. Towards the end of the episode, I'm going to be talking about the Thursday night football game that is tonight when you're listening to this, I believe, between not the Jacksonville Jaguars, between the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. Probably the most boring game of the year, but I will tell you what it means for some people and why it might have some future implications. So we're going to get into that later on in the episode. We're also going to touch on the NBA coaching carousel. Doc Rivers out as the Clippers head coach. A bit of a surprise to me. We'll talk about from the Clippers standpoint where he could land. It's looking like he might be the next Philadelphia head coach. We'll talk about everything NBA coaching carousel later on in the episode as well as recapping the Monday Night Football game. I know it's been a couple days since that game happened, but I've had some time to think about it. I'll talk about why the Chiefs are so good, why the Chiefs are destined to maybe become a dynasty, and also why I have legitimate doubts about Lamar Jackson and how special maybe he is, and why I think he might not even be a top 5 quarterback in football right now. We'll get into that stuff later on in the episode as well, but of course we're going to start with Game 1 of the NBA Finals. That was tonight when I'm recording this, but last night when you're listening to this, between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Miami Heat. Honestly, who did I have winning this game? Game 1? I think I liked the Heat going into Game 1 only because LeBron had lost, I believe, 7 of his last 8 Game 1s. On top of that, Miami had won their previous 3 Game 1s going into the playoffs. I liked the Heat, but I don't think this game could have gone any worse for the Miami Heat. I think they had one bright spot, which I will talk about, but for the Los Angeles Lakers, I don't think the score does justice of how much they absolutely dominated this game. The Lakers won 116-98 again over the Heat. Game 1 of the NBA Finals last night. When you're listening to this, I'll talk about the Lakers a majority of this segment. Of course, I do want to talk about the Heat. Anthony Davis was incredible, 34, 9, and 5. LeBron James was 25, 13, and 9. KCP had 13. Caruso had 10. Kuzma had 3. Rondo 7. Danny Green 11. Here's the thing. there's a couple reasons why the Heat lost. So the Heat were up at a certain point, I believe 23-10 in the first quarter, and I was like, wow, the Miami Heat have really taken another step, right? They're going at the Lakers. I was really surprised about all that, right? And what happened was, after that, Goran Dragic left with an apparent injury. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he left from a supposed foot injury. And then Jimmy Butler rolled his ankle, which appeared to be pretty badly. He stayed in the game, but he was hobbling the rest of the game. And the Lakers had, I think, maybe their greatest three-point shooting game in their history. At least the first half. They had 11 threes in the first half. They literally could not miss. That continued going on in the second half. The Heat were banged up. The Heat couldn't. The Heat looked overwhelmed. And I'll continue to talk about the Heat, of course. I will talk about the LA Lakers and why this series could get ugly quick for the Miami Heat if they don't win Game 2. But, of course, Dragic was out, Butler was out, and then later on in the game, Bam Adebayo re-aggravated, I think, a shoulder injury he's had since the Boston Celtics series. I think people have been wondering if maybe that block that he had against Jason Tatum Game 1 hurt his shoulder. I could see that. There was also another point where he, I think, was going at Jason Tatum, I don't know, and all of a sudden his arm got yanked back, and he's been wearing sort of not just his shooting sleeve that he usually wears, but he also has been wearing an undershirt. Which usually signifies that somebody's dealing with a shoulder injury. And I think he re-aggravated that tonight, going up for a rebound over Dwight Howard. So 3 of the Miami Heat's best 4 players were either injured or out. Bam Adebayo, I don't think, played at all in the fourth quarter. Goran Dragic, I think, is going to be out for the series now. It appears he has something wrong in his foot. They haven't officially said that he's out for the series, and there have been players who have played through this sort of injury, but he was doubtful to return right away. I want to say, I don't really know how to pronounce this, but it was in his, it was, when you saw the play, right? It looked like a torn Achilles if you're watching it, because what happens was he went up, it was a non-contact injury. He kind of faked a shot up and took a step forward, and then the back of his leg sort of shot up. And if you remember, we saw that exact same image for Kevin Durant in the NBA Finals when he tore his Achilles over a year ago now. Not this June, but the June before that. If you remember, he tore his Achilles in the iconic sort of video clip that was surfacing around social media then was, it looked like his muscles all just shot up. That's what happened for Dragic. So when I saw that, I thought Goran Dragic tore his Achilles. He did not, thankfully. It says that he suffered a plantar tear in his left foot. They don't necessarily know how long he will be out. It is appearing that he's not going to play in the series. Somebody mentioned that Joe Johnson had played in 2 games after this and then received surgery. I don't know if Goran Dragic's going to do that. I don't know if the Heat are going to have Goran Dragic do that. He was doubtful immediately. Rachel Nichols says that he was limping pretty heavily. He had a complete cast on. So it's looking like Dragic is actually going to be out the rest of the NBA Finals, which is really bad for Miami considering he was their leading scorer in the playoffs by a considerable margin. That makes me think that the Lakers could get this done quicker rather than later. Not to mention Bam Adebayo, who is going to play Game 2 apparently with a lot of treatment, clearly has a bad shoulder injury. I don't know what it is. It probably requires some sort of small minor surgery that he will need to take in the offseason. He's not taking it now. Barry Jackson, I believe, of the Miami Herald said that it's going to just be a lot of treatment and for the next couple of days, or today, Thursday, when you're listening to this, and then he'll play again on Friday. Jimmy Butler has a bum ankle. I don't expect him to miss any games. I believe he will play. He played last night, showed some moments where it looked like he was actually pretty healthy and pretty good to go, and then there were other moments where he was limping actually pretty heavily on the court. Still played. And Tyler Hero in this game as well. He wasn't hurt, but I think you could consider this maybe Tyler Hero's worst game of his career. It was the first game, I think, all year, Tyler Hero's rookie season, including in the playoffs, where I thought Tyler Hero looked not necessarily scared, but looked a little bit like, this moment's a little bit too big for me. He was getting his stuff rocked in the first half. They were going at him on the defensive end of the floor. The Heat played a lot less zone than I thought they were. I think it's because Eric Spoelstra knows LeBron James, and LeBron James was anticipating the zone and probably knew or had some sort of strategy to pick it apart. So Spoelstra decided to throw out the man-to-man this game and try to shake it up. And they were going at Tyler Hero every single possession. He was the weak link of the defense, clearly, and they were going after him, as well as Anthony Davis going after not necessarily Jay Crowder, but just the undersizedness of the Heat. Bam Adebayo didn't guard Anthony Davis a whole lot. That was surprising to me. Bam Adebayo did get some reps on LeBron James. That wasn't surprising to me. He did pretty well in those reps. But pretty much what the Lakers were doing the entire game, which is why I'm so curious to see how Eric Spoelstra will respond in Game 2, the Lakers were just switching everything. And usually the Heat are the team switching everything, but it was the Lakers trying to get mismatches for LeBron, and particularly Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis was feasting because of this. Now, the Heat are in trouble, okay? Because while the obvious fact that Heat fans will say is, well, the Lakers can't keep up the shooting. They won't hit 11 threes in the first, half again. That is true. Again, these happen, once or twice every series for the LA Lakers when the supporting cast really shows up for LeBron and AD and shoots the lights out of the ball, and there's almost nothing you can do, right? Which was tonight was. Again, the Lakers were up 30 at a certain point, right? And the Heat cut it to, I think, 15 with about 3 minutes left, or something like that, which was absolutely crazy to me, without Dragic, without Butler, without Bam. And the thing is yes, that's true that the shooting probably will not continue. But for the Heat, you're out Goran Dragic now. You're going to have to change your starting lineup. It's looking like probably Tyler Hero's going to start for the rest of the series, which is interesting. So now you have a kid who's been usually coming off the bench now in a starting role as your starting point guard, probably going forward, unless they decide to throw Kendrick Nunn in, who I will talk about. So again, Hero's going to go from coming off the bench to starting, going against LeBron James, Anthony Davis, the rest of it, and he was clearly not. I don't think Tyler Hero was scared. I just think that Tyler Hero was getting his ass handed to him the entire game. He ended up with 14 points, had a pretty nice fourth quarter. He had a nice little stretch where he had 5 straight points when the game was still sort of in the grasp in the first quarter. But obviously the Heat lost, and it's not necessarily just because of Tyler Hero, but it's just a whole complete effort. And again, they were going at Tyler Hero the entire game. The reason why this could get ugly for the Miami Heat, if this exact replica game, maybe not necessarily the shooting, but the utter domination of the Los Angeles Lakers in the paint by Anthony Davis consistently, the Heat could be in trouble. And if the Heat go down 0-2, this series is going to end in 4 or 5. It's just how it's going to be, because the Los Angeles Lakers are playing at such a level right now that all of these guys, including Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who I think has been the third best player for the Lakers this postseason, is really, they're all locked in. They're all shooting the lights out. And again, even if that exact shooting will not continue, and I agree, I don't think it will continue throughout this entire series if it goes extended 6-7 games. But I don't think they're also going to, have terrible shooting and not shoot anything. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the role players in every single game this season, or this series, are shooting good. Not necessarily poorly, like some games they do, but I don't know if they'll shoot as great as they did, last night when you're listening to this, but they might consistently shoot at a good level, at a good clip, at, 40% from 3, 35% from 3. And even then, the Heat can live with that and they can fight that off. But with no Goran Dragic, with Bam Adebayo playing hurt, and with Jimmy Butler playing hurt, this could get early, this could be over before it even really starts. And it's a shame to see injuries really plague a team. The Miami Heat have been the Cinderella story of the NBA, going through the Pacers, going through the Bucks, and then going through the Celtics, and now all the way to the NBA Finals, kind of proving that you don't need, a big 3, 2 big superstars to take you to the finals. You need grit, you need hustle, you need toughness, you need defense, you need shooting, right? And for all that to maybe potentially come to an end because of the injuries to your leading playoff scorer, Goran Dragic, and starting point guard, I don't think he's going to play at all this series. Jimmy Butler's going to play the rest of this series on a bum ankle. Not great. And Bam Adebayo is clearly dealing with a really badly hurt shoulder that he's just going to get tons of treatment for and somehow try to play Game 2. And now who are you asking to step up if you're the Miami Heat? Because Game 2 is a must-win. Game 2 is a Game 7 for the Miami Heat. They cannot go down 0-2 to this LA Laker team. They will not come back from that. You're talking sweeps territory or in 5 if you go down 0-2. If the Heat can somehow manage to tie this series 1-1, again, it's a whole new series. We restart Game 3. Get your confidence back up if you're Miami. Not necessarily that they don't have confidence. I know they have confidence. But get your confidence back up of your fans, everything like that. Go 1-1. Show the Lakers that you are meant to be here, that you're not just, this Cinderella team that can beat anybody in the East but can't touch anybody in the West. 1-1 is what the Heat need this series to be going into Game 3. And if they go down 0-2, I don't know if you can do what, the Raptors did against the Celtics or what the Nuggets did against the Clippers. I don't know if you can do that to this LA LeBron team. I'm not sure. LeBron in the finals, he's so locked in. AD in the finals is looking so good right now. I don't know if you can come back down 2-0. So if you're the Heat, you got to win Game 3. And what are you asking of your guys? Because people are going to have to step up. Jimmy Butler's playing hurt. He might somehow get to his stat line, but he's just not going to be as effective as he usually is. I don't think Bam Adebayo is going to be effective as he usually is because he's dealing with clearly a really bad hurt shoulder. Your starting point guard is out. Who are the Heat going to look for to really step up? Tyler Hero is going to have to potentially be the leading scorer of this Miami Heat team. And that is so much to ask of your 20-year-old rookie to be your leading scorer in the NBA Finals. But there's a real chance that if the Heat have any chance in this series now, after the tragic injury and how Bam and Butler are both playing severely injured, Tyler Hero, who is healthy, has to be the guy who's taking a majority of the shots, playmaking the most. They love to run the offense through Bam Adebayo. I don't know if Bam is capable of doing that right now. And maybe Bam's best asset from here on out in the series is being a decoy if he's injured, or same with Jimmy Butler. And if Tyler Hero can step up and get you 22 points a night, then you have a chance to win the game. Same with Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson, even though he likes to take only wide open shots, when I watched last night's game, he had a ton of, decent looks, not great looks. He needs to take those. He's an elite three-point shooter. He needs to take the contested looks and hit contested shots. Jay Crowder needs to hit the open threes when he can. But I do want to touch on Kendrick Nunn, because he is an interesting factor. And I'm not saying he can necessarily save this Miami Heat team, but there's a real chance that he could provide something that the Heat desperately need in order to get back into this series. And that's scoring, because he, after being kind of dusted off the shelf, Kendrick Nunn is first-team All-NBA rookie, second in Rookie of the Year voting, got to the playoffs and didn't really play. He actually got the virus COVID-19 and hasn't really been the same since. Comes in the NBA Finals and in 18 points, gets 18 quick points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists, 8 of 11 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3. And he was probably the Heat's best player, for a considerable stretch. There was a stretch where he came in and all he was doing was getting buckets. Now, Goran Dragic is out, so Tyler Hero is probably the starting point guard going forward. So who's the new sixth man? I think this Heat and Eric Spoelstra are going to turn to Kendrick Nunn. And if Kendrick Nunn is back to what he was the beginning of the season, where he can consistently give you, again, 18 points in 19 minutes coming off the bench, that's legitimate type stuff. And that is something that the Lakers did not prepare for and are not expecting. You need a little bit of a wild card, something to throw in there to throw the Lakers off. Kendrick Nunn coming off the bench and giving you legitimate points can do that. So if Kendrick Nunn can step up, if Tyler Hero can step up, and if Bam and Butler can just give you maybe 80, 90% of what they usually are. I don't know if they can, but if they can, I think the Heat have a chance to win Game 2. I'm not saying I necessarily like the Heat in Game 2. I'm not saying I necessarily like the Heat in this series going forward, because again, the Heat were absolutely dominated in Game 1 by the LA Lakers, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James, and I will get to them. But if any team in the NBA right now can take that punch, go down 30, lose your starting point guard, and your two best players are playing hurt. If any team can take that and rebound and bounce back and win Game 2, it's this Miami Heat team. I don't necessarily know if I like them to do that, but they absolutely can. I don't necessarily know if they will. Again, you need Hero to step up. You need Duncan Robinson to take those contested shots. Jay Crowder's got to hit his open threes, and somebody's got to figure out a way to guard Anthony Davis better. I don't know if that means putting Bam on him full time. I know they don't want to necessarily do that to get Bam Adebayo in foul trouble. I get that, but it's the finals. You're going to have to take a risk. You're going to have to trust Bam Adebayo, despite playing hurt, to just make life difficult for Anthony Davis. He did not guard him enough last night. All right, I want to talk about the Lakers now. Of course, they absolutely dominated. LeBron James is locked in. So is Anthony Davis. Right now, Anthony Davis looks like he might be Finals MVP. Again, this is the type of game that Anthony Davis thrives in, when the supporting cast is shooting well and the game is starting to get away from the other team. AD is really, really good from that point on, right? Once you get sort of like a 6-point lead, right? AD is really good at extending that 6-point lead to a 15-point lead, and that 15-point lead to a 20-point lead, and that 20-point lead to a 30-point lead. And that's exactly what the LA Lakers did when they ran through Anthony Davis sort of in that second quarter and that third quarter. That's what really won the game. That's when the game was over. And again, I've been hard on Anthony Davis, saying he's not good in the clutch, he's not good in the fourth quarter. I still stand by that. I don't think when the game is 5 points or less and it's close, Anthony Davis is the guy you go to. I think that's all LeBron James time. But when you're up 6 in the second or third quarter, AD can get that lead to a 15-point lead, like I said, a 20-point lead. That's what he did. Anthony Davis is an incredible talent. Do not get me wrong. He deserved every point he got last night. He was the best player on the floor. I think he was better than LeBron James last night, man. 34, 9, and 5. He was incredible. 2 of 4 from the three-point line, 11 of 21 from the field, 10 of 10 from the free throw line. Can he keep this up? He can. He absolutely can. Unlike maybe the Laker role players, I think Anthony Davis could get this stat line every night. I told you, when he gets 20-plus shots, when he's looking for a shot, and when the Lakers are not playing from behind, Anthony Davis is arguably the best player in the world. Seriously. When the Lakers are not playing from behind in the game, again, it's already at 5 or 6, Anthony Davis becomes unstoppable, and he's one of the best players, seriously, unguardable in the entire league. And that's what it was looking like that night. LeBron James, 1 assist away from a triple-double. He was absolutely incredible. He was really interesting in this game because I think in the first quarter, there's a lot of mutual respect between Spoelstra and LeBron now. I don't necessarily know it was there when he was in Miami, but I think now LeBron has had a grown appreciation for Eric Spoelstra, and I think he recognizes that he's probably the best coach he's ever played for. And he was really easing his way into the first quarter of the game, trying to pick apart what the Heat were doing. And the Heat were doing a good job on LeBron of getting Butler, and Hero actually made a nice play against him on defense. And then LeBron James was like, okay, I know who to attack now. And he kept switching on to Duncan Robinson, and it kept ending poorly. The Heat need to find a way to stop, letting the Lakers switch everything. And it also means the Heat might need to consider playing 2 bigs. They've been running this Crowder-Bam lineup all playoffs. It's worked. I don't know if they can handle Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis. I think you need a second big there to handle Howard, maybe Olynyk, maybe Myers-Leonard. If he can get some minutes guarding Howard and you put Bam on AD, that's the route I would go. Don't know if the Heat will go that road. But getting back to the Lakers, man, absolutely incredible performance game 1. Shot the lights out. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope needs some more respect because he was getting bullied on social media for being terrible. Everyone said he was bad. Same with Danny Green. Both of them showed out last night. Led to maybe the best 3-point shooting half in Los Angeles Laker basketball history. Mostly because of those 2 guys. Those are the 2 guys that were hitting the most 3-point shots. I'm interested to see what happens in Game 2. I think the Game 2 will be a lot closer. I just think that I don't know if the Heat have enough firepower anymore without Goran Dragic to take it to the LA Lakers. And I think the 2 big system is really hurting the Miami Heat. I think Crowder has been ruled kind of ineffective in this series. It'll see how Spo makes the adjustments, and I think he will. And I think Hero will step up. And I think the game will be closer, Game 2. I just don't necessarily know if the Heat will win. I think the Los Angeles Lakers take this. I think this series is going to get over before it even started. I'm thinking Lakers in 5 now, seriously. It's not completely over. The Heat could make something happen. Don't get me wrong. It's only 1-0. But LeBron's too locked in. Anthony Davis seems too powerful right now. And now all the injuries on top of that. It just seems destined that the LA Lakers are going to win the championship this year. It looks like everything's kind of aligning for them. Let me know what you guys think of the NBA Finals and this series. All right, we're going to take a short break. On the other side of this break, I want to talk everything NBA coaching carousel. Doc Rivers fired as the Los Angeles Clippers head coach. Roker Keeland, where do the Clippers go from here? And who should Philadelphia hire, Mike D'Antoni or Doc Rivers? I'll talk about both of their styles and who I would hire, and I'll give you my predictions on where I think each team that needs a head coach vacancy will go. We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. We really do appreciate it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. I just finished talking about the Miami Heat versus LA Lakers NBA Finals Game 1. Again, I don't want to rule out that the Heat can come back and win this series, but after Game 1, man, I don't think it could have gone any worse. They were down 30 at one point. 3 of their best 4 players are hurt. 2 of them will be playing hurt. Dragic won't even be playing. Again, you need Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson to step up, and maybe another big to come in and try to step up as well, unless Jay Crowder can somehow find a way to guard Anthony Davis. I don't I don't see it happening. This series is on the path right now for a sweep or maybe even 5 games, one of the two. But if the Heat can somehow manage to come back and win Game 1, it's a whole new series going into Game 3. Can the Heat do it? Absolutely. Would I bet them to do it? I don't necessarily think so. I think I like the Lakers to win a close game in Game 2, and then I think from there the Lakers will take over and just win the championship. Lakers would have deserved to win the championship, don't get me wrong. Again, I don't think the series is necessarily over, but with all the injuries piling up for the Heat, it's just they were already not necessarily outmatched. I think the Heat had the better roster, but they were already at some sort of deficit because of how good Anthony Davis and LeBron James have been playing recently, specifically together. They can't sustain injuries like that. The Heat can't necessarily overcome that. At some point, you need that talent. And I know Heat culture and everything is like you don't need that talent. You can still win. We always have enough. I don't necessarily know if that reigns true, maybe just for this series. I want to switch gears now to the NBA coaching carousel, something I didn't get to talk about in my last episode because we just had so much to talk about. Doc Rivers is out as the LA Clippers head coach, which is really, really interesting to me. I thought the Clippers were just going to run it back. No way I would have told you that they would have fired Doc Rivers because, again, I don't know if there's necessarily a better candidate out there than Doc Rivers. And again, Doc Rivers gets a lot of heat. He's blown a lot of leads. He's blown, I think, a 3-1 lead in the last 3 decades, something like that. He blew it with the Celtics. He's blown it with the Clippers, obviously. Here's the thing. Doc Rivers is still an incredible coach. All right, we know Doc Rivers is still at least a top half coach in the NBA. A lot of people are coming on here slandering him, saying he's absolutely terrible and he can't do. Doc Rivers is still an NBA champion. Doc Rivers was still a really good coach for the Clippers this year. At the end of the day, if you're coached by Doc Rivers, you probably go to the playoffs, and that can't be said for a lot of NBA coaches. It just can't. Now, I'll talk about the Clippers side of this first, and then I'll talk about where I think Doc Rivers is going to end up coaching and what it means for another head coaching candidate who I think really wanted that job, and I don't think will necessarily get it anymore. There's a lot of teams that need head coaches, and for Doc Rivers to be on the market is something crazy. But for the Clippers, I vividly remember Kawhi Leonard and maybe even Paul George too saying, one of the reasons why they all came to LA was to be coached by Doc Rivers. I think Kawhi Leonard is really high on Doc Rivers and wanted to be coached by Doc Rivers. And there were reports that Paul George and Kawhi talked to Steve Ballmer, the owner, and there was nothing they could do to change his mind. And of course, Doc Rivers was let go after years and years of being the Clippers head coach. And I think he was probably the best Clippers head coach in history. One of the few guys that actually got them to the playoffs consistently. If you remember, he coached the teams that were led by Chris Paul and Blake Griffin Lob City years, and then obviously the Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell year last year. The Clippers were awesome, always awesome with Doc Rivers, and I was really surprised to let them see Doc Rivers go. Was it necessary? Maybe. Did the Clippers not reach their goal this year? Definitely. But were the Nuggets a really good team, and Jamal Murray was really hot at the time? 100%. So I don't know if I would have fired Doc Rivers for blowing that 3-1 lead. I think you could have run it back this year. Maybe if it happened another year, I could see that. Who's going to be the next Clipper head coach? I have to guess Ty Lue. There's a lot of guys out there. Mike D'Antoni, I don't think wants to come coach the LA Clippers. I don't think he's going to come coach the LA Clippers. I doubt that. I don't think that maybe Kenny Atkinson is going to be the guy that they give it to. They're not really in a developmental type mode or anything like that. They're in win now mode. And Ty Lue did win a championship in 2016. Knows LeBron James and the LA Lakers, so maybe that's another kind of part of it as well. I thought Ty Lue would be the Brooklyn Nets head coach. Of course, they went with Steve Nash. I thought Ty Lue would be the Philadelphia head coach, and then Mike D'Antoni emerged as the front runner. So Ty Lue has kind of been put on the back burner here. And if you're just going to promote from within, you do have Ty Lue on the staff. Would I disagree with that call? I would. I wouldn't fire Doc Rivers to bring in Tyronn Lue. I think Doc Rivers is a better coach than Ty Lue, and I think this is downgrading for the LA Clippers. But if Steve Ballmer thinks there needs to be a change of scenery, something to shake things up instead of just purely running it back next year, again, I am a strong believer in not running it back. I don't think any NBA team should ever run it back with the exact same roster the following year. You always have to look to get better, add a shooter, add a defender, add a 3-and-D guy, add picks, add a rookie, something. Never just run it back with the same roster. So maybe that's what they're deciding to do. It is interesting, though, to see Doc Rivers on the opening market. I expect Ty Lue to be the head coach of the Clippers. Again, I wouldn't agree with firing Doc Rivers to bring on Tyronn Lue. Let me know what you guys think about the Clippers and everything like that. As for Doc Rivers, where is he going to coach? Honestly, when he was relieved of his duties, the first thing I thought of was Doc Rivers is going to go coach the Houston Rockets. His son plays for the Houston Rockets. They've had battles over the years between the Rockets and the Clippers. They've had beef, everything like that. I thought that immediately when I thought that, I was like, oh, wow, Doc Rivers, championship-level coach, going to go coach the Houston Rockets, who believe they're probably a championship-level team. And then I was like, okay, Doc Rivers will bring over a big, and I was going through all that. And then all of a sudden, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN said that Doc Rivers is now the front-runner to be the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, which is really interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, I really thought Philly and Mike D'Antoni were seriously like this. You can't see my fingers, but like really close to getting this done. I thought that Mike D'Antoni was going to come in. They were going to shake things up, run a new offensive system, shake up the roster, potentially break up Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, move Al Horford, potentially Tobias Harris, all this stuff, right? That's what I thought was going to happen, in all honesty. They're going to change everything up. Now it's looking like Doc Rivers is going to be the next head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Elton Brand and other 76ers front office management, all that, give this roster to Doc Rivers and say, save this. With Mike D'Antoni, they might have been like, okay, we know Mike D'Antoni cannot work with this roster. We will change it. But maybe they believe Doc Rivers can. Maybe they believe Doc Rivers in particular can win a championship with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons on the roster. And maybe Doc Rivers told them that in the meeting that they had during Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Apparently all talked and they all watched the game together. Maybe they talked about that, how Doc Rivers is confident, and maybe he wouldn't want to break up the Ben Simmons-Joel Embiid pairing. And if I'm the Philadelphia 76ers management, I would go with Doc Rivers over Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni is not a champion. He's had a lot of early round playoff exits, and Doc Rivers has too. But again, Doc Rivers is just a better coach. His teams have more success. He's a better, I think he galvanizes his troops really well. I think a lot of people want to play for Doc Rivers. So Doc Rivers in Philly is really, really interesting. Now, if he is hired, do I think they will break up Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons? Now I don't. I think if Mike D'Antoni's hired, 100% they're breaking that crew up, and I think they'll probably pick Embiid over Simmons. I just believe that. But now if Doc Rivers is hired, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're just going to do everything they can to move off the Horford contract for a couple more shooters and keep Tobias Harris and kind of not necessarily run it back with just this new system that Doc Rivers might present. But it could be interesting. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Doc Rivers really sold the 76ers on keeping this roster together, keeping Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid together going forward. I think they'll still try to move off Al Horford. I think they're still going to try to add shooters. I think they just have to. Doc Rivers' teams usually have a lot of shooting. Obviously, the Celtics teams had Ray Allen. Obviously, some of these other teams with the Lakers, Lou Williams, some of these other guys, of course, they were shooting on the Clippers this year as well. They're going to try to add some shooters, I think. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's a bunch of guys. Doc Rivers has coached a lot of teams. There might be a lot of veteran guys that want to come and play for the Philadelphia 76ers now that Doc Rivers is potentially the new coach. I could totally see that. I'm expecting Doc Rivers now to 100% be the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. And it'll be fascinating for me to see how it turns out. Can Doc Rivers lead this team to a championship? I'm not sure. But I don't think there's another better head coaching candidate out there. You're talking about going from Brett Brown to Doc Rivers. That is a big upgrade, in my opinion. Unlike the Clippers, who I think are having a pretty big downgrade going from from Doc Rivers to Ty Lue. Now, what does this mean? Of course, Doc Rivers going to Philadelphia, most likely. What does that mean for Mike D'Antoni and his job? Because it looked like him and Mike D'Antoni in Philadelphia were really gonna make this work, and Philly was gonna change everything and run a whole new scheme and maybe run back a whole new team. Now Mike D'Antoni's kind of on the outskirts because Mike D'Antoni now has really less options to kind of choose from. Chicago's job already filled up. Brooklyn's job already filled up. Of course, Chicago got Billy Donovan. Steve Nash obviously was hired by the Brooklyn Nets, and now Doc Rivers is looking like he's going to Philadelphia. So there's really only a few teams left that still need a coach. One of them being Oklahoma City, which I could see. One of them being the New Orleans Pelicans, which I could see, but I don't love that fit for Mike D'Antoni. Where I think Mike D'Antoni will be the next head coach of now, I think Mike D'Antoni is going to go to the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers are a guard-driven team. They have a ton of guards. T.J. McConnell. They have Malcolm Brogdon. They obviously have Victor Oladipo, but it's looking like he's going to be out. I'll talk about that this segment as well for something he said. I think Mike D'Antoni is going to be more appealing to that, and I think they're going to, if any team's going to run that small ball lineup, I think Indiana would actually be interested in that. It would not surprise me at all if Indiana moved off Miles Turner, maybe even moved off Sabonis, maybe even moved off Oladipo, and just had this pure shooting young team for Mike D'Antoni to completely mold into their system. Here's the analogy I'll make. Mike D'Antoni runs his system in the way he wants a team to go, right? Eric Spoelstra, the head coach of the Miami Heat, runs a system in the team he wants to go. This roster for the Miami Heat is handpicked by Eric Spoelstra. This is everybody he wants. This fits the entire style he wants to do, and now they're in the NBA Finals. I think Mike D'Antoni kind of had that power in Houston. Not necessarily. I think there's some other players he could have won. I think there's probably some more changes he could have liked. Put him in Indiana, give him full control of the roster with the type of guards he wants, get even more guards, even more shooting. That Indiana team could be a top 4 team in the East and maybe potentially make some noise if Oladipo stays and returns to the form. Because again, remember, Mike D'Antoni believes he can turn Victor Oladipo into the next James Harden. I don't think Victor Oladipo is staying no matter who they hire at head coach. But Malcolm Brogdon's a really good guard. They have a lot of good guards already there. TJ Warren, another guy that's really good there. Domantas Sabonis, if they want to hang on to him. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Mike D'Antoni wants to run it back with a ton of shooters. Maybe keeping Sabonis, actually, who's more of kind of a point forward from the offensive standpoint. He can pass really well. He can shoot really well. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Mike D'Antoni, the Indiana Pacers, makes a lot of sense. And that was the initial rumor of why the Indiana Pacers fired Nate McMillan. It's because they really wanted Mike D'Antoni. I expect Mike D'Antoni to be the head coach of the Indiana Pacers now. That's just the way I think this is going. And again, I think they're going to use a lot of different guards and things like that. As for the other teams that still need a head coach, Oklahoma City, I could see them going after Kenny Atkinson. That makes a lot of sense to me. Kenny Atkinson getting hired makes a lot of sense for a couple reasons. I think Oklahoma City is going to try to capitalize on the trade value they have on Chris Paul, try to move him to a contender, get even younger. Obviously, they're going to have a ton of rookies coming in. They have, 2-3 first-round picks this year, some of them pretty high as well. They might trade up. Everything, right? They're going to go young, full-on rebuild. Kenny Atkinson makes a lot of sense in Oklahoma City. He built that Brooklyn Nets culture, really, helped D'Lo's development, some other guys as well. I could see him coming in to help SGA's development, Basley's development as well, and all the young guys they're going to have through the draft and everything like that. That makes a lot of sense. Kenny Atkinson, OKC, makes a lot of sense to me. For New Orleans, that's the interesting one here. Because New Orleans' roster is not great. But you're getting the opportunity to coach Zion Williamson, potentially one of the best players in the NBA, as soon as next year. Jason Kidd is the guy that makes a lot of sense to me for New Orleans. Jason Kidd coached Giannis Antetokounmpo and was pretty much the main factor in Giannis Antetokounmpo's development besides Giannis's own personal work ethic and drive and everything like that and skill. If Jason Kidd was given the partnership with Zion Williamson, I think that would be really good for Zion Williamson's development. And I think Zion Williamson would be able to develop the way we all want to see him develop and be that special player in the NBA, become maybe the best player in the NBA one day. So Jason Kidd to New Orleans makes a lot of sense to me. So to recap, I think Doc Rivers is going to Philly. I think Mike D'Antoni is going to Indiana. I think Kenny Atkinson makes a lot of sense in Oklahoma City. And I think also that Jason Kidd makes a lot of sense in New Orleans. The only other team that is still looking for a head coach, and I don't know what direction they're going to go, is the Houston Rockets. I don't know, because I don't necessarily think any of these guys out there fits their style. Jason Kidd, I could see also going to Houston because Jason Kidd was a guard, and maybe he would like the guard-dominated team that Houston has. But if you want to run any sort of style that wasn't what Mike D'Antoni was running, then I don't understand how you can take, that Houston Rockets head coaching job. I think Jason Kidd would rather go coach New Orleans and Zion Williamson than the pressure of coaching the Rockets with a roster that's already assembled, an offensive system that you kind of have to run, otherwise James Harden won't have the success that he has. So for Houston, I don't really have a name for you guys. I don't necessarily know where they could go. Maybe they look to college. Maybe they look to a former NBA player like the Brooklyn Nets did with Steve Nash. I just don't necessarily know where the Houston Rockets will go with their head coaching search. Final topic for the NBA before the rest of the episode. I'll move on to the NFL. I'll talk about the Thursday night football game between the Jets and the Broncos, and I'll also talk about as well why I think I have severe doubts about Lamar Jackson. That'll be at the very end of the episode. Here's the thing. Victor Oladipo went on Fat Joe, who I don't know exactly what he does, but he was on Instagram Live last night, and Oladipo was pretty much saying, for me, it's all about the money and hardware. It's pretty much the same reports that have been reported earlier in the year. He pretty much said it himself. I want to win, and I want my money. Can Indiana give him that? No. I don't think Indiana can give him the wins, and I don't even think Indiana will give him the money at that point. That's the thing. I don't think Indiana's going to give him a max contract that he wants. So I think Victor Oladipo's on the out. Even if they do hire Mike D'Antoni, even though Mike D'Antoni believes he can make him the next James Harden, whatever. If Victor Oladipo doesn't think he's going to win a championship in Indiana and doesn't think he's going to get a max contract, he's not going to stay. And I don't think he's going to get either if he does stay. So there's a lot of different interesting teams that I think Victor Oladipo will go. The New York Knicks are an interesting option. I don't see it. Again, you have to look at the teams that fit the criteria, money and winning. So look at the contenders. Denver Nuggets make a ton of sense for Victor Oladipo. Could they throw in one of their young pieces or a draft pick, something? I don't think it's going to cost you a lot to get Victor Oladipo because, again, Victor Oladipo has not shown other teams that he's consistently going to get you 23 points a game. Now, the last time we saw Victor Oladipo was that round 1 series against the Miami Heat where they got swept, but Oladipo did lead, I think, the team in scoring with, I believe, 23, 24 points a game. Big stuff. Can he consistently do that for an entire season? Then you're looking at a star/superstar player, a guy who could make your big 2 a big 3. So Denver makes a lot of sense. Another team that makes a lot of sense is Brooklyn. I think they could maybe move off a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie, and I think you could seriously do Spencer Dinwiddie and a pick straight up for Victor Oladipo. That makes a lot of sense for Brooklyn, would make a lot of sense for Indiana too. If Mike D'Antoni is hired, I could see them going that route. Obviously, the LA Lakers as well. Could you maybe throw in a pick? Maybe Kuzma. Maybe if you give Mike D'Antoni some shooters, some KCPs, maybe a Caruso, something like that. Maybe I could see that as well. But the team in my mind that's going to land Victor Oladipo is the team that's in the NBA Finals, the Miami Heat. I'm anticipating now that the Heat are going to lose this Finals, and Pat Riley thinks he's one piece away. I don't think he's going to want to move off Tyler Hero, who's been incredible this playoffs. I understand he played a terrible Game 1. He'll rebound. He'll be fine for an NBA career at least. They're not going to want to move off Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, and I think Pat Riley thinks that he can win the East again next year, and I believe that too. I think the Heat should be the favorites to come out of the East next year, them or Brooklyn. Obviously, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I need to see what KD is going to do. But even if the Heat don't necessarily win the East next year, like as in first place, but they make the playoffs in the East and are a top 4 seed, again, what just happened this year can totally be replicated next year. They don't have to have the number 1 record in the East and still come out of the East like they did this year. And I would expect that to happen if I'm being honest with you. So Pat Riley, again, he will know that he's only one piece away. Who will he go after? Victor Oladipo makes a lot of sense. A guy who lives in Miami already, owns a gym in Miami already, really close with Dwayne Wade, really close with Bam Adebayo, really close with a lot of Heat players. Kendrick Nunn having a good NBA Finals, raising his trade value back up is huge. I think you could throw in Kelly Olynyk, Kendrick Nunn, and your first-round pick this year and beat any other offer. Again, getting a guard and a shooting big in this league is huge. Going to a team that's probably going to be led by Mike D'Antoni, throw in another pick. Victor Oladipo coming to Miami Heat, and then the Heat potentially running out a lineup next year of Hero, and then I think Hero's going to be the starting point guard of the Heat next year. I understand what Dragic's doing. Also, we don't know if Dragic's injury will continue into next year. I think Dragic's better coming off the bench, specifically in the regular season. I think they'll go Hero, Oladipo, Butler, probably Crowder again next year if they re-sign him, and then Bam Adebayo. And I think that team can win a championship. That team could beat this Lakers team, I think, in 6, if you're being honest with me. Everybody healthy, everything like that. We'll see where it goes, but Victor Oladipo to the Miami Heat just makes a little bit too much sense for me. Again, with the coaching carousel, it's so up in the air. It's so crazy. I haven't seen the NBA coaching carousel crazy like this in a long time, where everybody's looking for a new guy. A lot of guys who are getting fired are getting immediately hired back up again. It's really interesting to see that type of stuff. Billy Donovan immediately getting hired. Doc Rivers is going to get immediately hired. Mike D'Antoni's going to get immediately hired. And then, of course, we got guys who were kind of assistants this year. Tyronn Lue is looking like he's going to be the head coach of the Clippers. And I really do think that Jason Kidd would make a lot of sense somewhere, in particular, New Orleans. All right, we're going to take another short break. On the other side of this break, I'm actually going to talk about first the Thursday Night Football matchup and the New York Jets and everything they're going to do. We'll talk about them quickly, and then for the final segment of today's episode, I will talk about that Monday night game between the Chiefs and Ravens and why I have some serious doubts about Lamar Jackson. We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Massford. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the podcast. We really do appreciate it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. Before I get into everything NFL, again, I just finished talking about the NBA coaching carousel. I don't think I've seen an NBA coaching carousel this crazy where so many guys on so many good teams are being let go. Mike D'Antoni and the Houston Rockets were a good team. He got let go. Obviously, Billy Donovan in Oklahoma City, good team. They mutually parted ways. And of course, Doc Rivers now with the LA Clippers were really good as well, and they parted ways at the end of the day as well. Again, I really like Jason Kidd going to New Orleans. I really think Mike D'Antoni will be Indiana's next head coach, and I think Doc Rivers is going to Philly. I think Kenny Atkinson makes sense in Oklahoma City. Again, I just don't really have a name for you guys for Houston. I really don't know what direction they're going to go. Their roster is so locked in. Maybe Jason Kidd would take that job. I don't know. He's the only guy I can think of that would maybe take that job. It's so tough with that one. So we'll see. I want to switch gears now to the NFL with probably the most boring game of the year. We have Jets Broncos. I'm a big fan of the Denver Broncos, except no Drew Lock tonight. Nor Courtland Sutton either. He's done for the year. So we're getting, I think, Cal Ripken versus Sam Darnold. Now, the Jets are favored to win this game. I don't think they will. I think the Jets might be the worst team in the league, and I think they might have given up on their coach. There's a lot of rumors swirling right now that if the Jets were to lose this Thursday night game, that Adam Gase would be fired. I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. Would it surprise me? Not one bit. The reason why I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, I think it was only 2 weeks ago where the owner of the New York Jets said Adam Gase was a brilliant offensive mind and I trust him. So I actually think Adam Gase, from that moment on, was given the authority to just finish out the year. I obviously think he'll be fired in the offseason. I think this team is a mess. I think this team, despite having an offensive head coach, is the worst offense in the league. And I genuinely think, I don't think this game will be good by any means. I don't know who will necessarily win, but I would bet on the Broncos to win this game. They're running out, I think, their third-string quarterback. I think Ripken might be a rookie or a second year going against Sam Darnold. And I do want to talk about Sam Darnold a little bit here because I think Sam Darnold deserves better. And I don't think Sam Darnold is as bad as a quarterback as everybody makes him out to be. This is because of Adam Gase. And I think Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback. But as we get closer and closer to the end of the season, and as the draft gets closer and closer, and as the losses keep piling up for the New York Jets, I think Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback. I don't know if he's the New York Jets franchise quarterback just because of who's coming out in the draft. I talked about this a little bit in my last episode. I want to go into deeper meaning here. Adam Gase is the worst offensive mind in the league. He's the worst coach in the league. It's not close. He's going to get fired. They do not have enough offensive weapon for Sam Darnold as well. They got Le'Veon Bell. They don't use him. They got some of these other guys. They don't use them. The defense is obviously depleted. It wouldn't surprise me if the Jets go 0-16 this year. Flat out. Would not surprise me. But it's not because of Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, does he throw interceptions? He does. Is he also trying to win the game? Yes. Here's the thing. Sam Darnold throws all these interceptions, but his team is down by so much. He's just trying to claw his team back into the game. And yes, he has a turnover problem. So do a lot of guys in this league. So does Daniel Jones. So does Josh Allen. So does Lamar Jackson. All of these guys have fumbling, turnover problems, right? There are a lot of picks. Doesn't mean he's not a franchise quarterback. Doesn't mean he doesn't make some absolutely incredible plays. Every single game for the New York Jets this year, they've lost badly. Sam Darnold, every single game, has made at least one throw where I was like, oh my God, wow. That is the type of play that a top 5 quarterback in football would make. If Sam Darnold had a better coach, a better system, a better offensive line, Sam Darnold would be better than a lot of quarterbacks in this league. Sam Darnold would be better than Ryan Tannehill right now. Sam Darnold, I think if you put him on the Dallas Cowboys, gives you better production and more wins than Dak Prescott does. I believe that. That's what I truly believe about Sam Darnold. So, if the New York Jets do end up with the number 1 overall pick, with all that being said about Sam Darnold, I wouldn't pass on Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is the next John Elway. He is the best quarterback prospect I've ever seen in my life. And while I think Sam Darnold is really good and could be a franchise quarterback for somebody, I don't know if he can do for the Jets. I think Sam Darnold needs stability. He needs a real head coach, and he needs a real system. What is interesting, though, is I don't think he's Josh Rosen. I don't think that if he is moved off of this year that he's going to be a backup somewhere. I think Sam Darnold could start for a lot of teams in this league. And again, if they lost, I think the Jets are going to lose again today, and I think that'll be the straw that broke the camel's back. I think the Jets season's over after today. If it isn't already over, right? They lose today to a beaten up Denver Broncos team not even playing their quarterback, right? You lose to them on Thursday night on primetime. If they lose badly, maybe they fire Gase. Who knows? I don't think they will. I think the Jets just ride it out, get the number 1 overall pick, and I think they take Trevor Lawrence, and I think you could trade Sam Darnold for a first-round pick and a third. There's a lot of teams that come to mind. The Rams come to mind if they're done with Goff. The Steelers come to mind if Big Ben retires after this year or they're looking for a new guy. The Saints make a lot of sense, too, if they'd rather have Sam Darnold than Jameis Winston. There's a lot of teams that could use Sam Darnold. A lot of teams with mediocre quarterbacks that could use Sam Darnold as well. I like Sam Darnold. I think he's somebody's franchise quarterback. Pittsburgh's really intriguing to me. Obviously, there's a connection with Juju Smith-Schuster there, too. They played on the same college team. I don't know if Big Ben's going to retire necessarily after this year or anything, but it is something to think about. Same with Chicago as well. I could see them going after him as well. Chicago's best quarterback would be Sam Darnold by far. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. Let me know what you guys think about the New York Jets, where they're going. Would you pass up on Trevor Lawrence and keep Sam Darnold? Let me know what you guys would do if you were the GM of the New York Jets. All right, we're going to take the one final short break. On the other side of this final break, for the next 5-10 minutes or so, I want to tell you why the Chiefs are probably going to be a dynasty and why I'm a little bit scared for, Lamar Jackson, why I don't think he's even a top 5 quarterback in football right now, and why he has a really, really big weakness and something he consistently cannot do, and why that's important for him going forward. We're getting to all that good stuff right after this short final break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. We really do appreciate it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, I didn't get a chance to talk about the Ravens-Chiefs game a whole lot, but I do want to talk about it. Obviously, the Chiefs won 34-20 back on Monday Night Football. The Chiefs were absolutely incredible, specifically Patrick Mahomes, 31 of 42, 385 yards, 4 touchdowns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 64 yards on the ground. Sammy Watkins, 62 yards receiving. Kelsey, 87 yards receiving. Hill, 77 yards receiving. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 70 yards receiving as well. And Mecole Hardman also had 81 yards receiving. So just throwing the ball all around was Patrick Mahomes, almost threw for 400 yards. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, 15 of 28, just 97 yards and a touchdown. Rushing, he had 83 yards on the ground. Here's the thing. There is something that Lamar Jackson consistently cannot do. Lamar Jackson cannot play from behind. He can't, which is why he can't beat the Chiefs and he can't win the playoffs. Lamar Jackson is currently on the path, and I think it's safe to almost say already, maybe it's early, maybe I'm too early on this. I think Lamar Jackson is the James Harden of the NFL. I think Lamar Jackson is incredible in the regular season, is incredible against, okay teams, maybe even some good teams, and of course bad teams as well. But when it comes down to play the big boys, the Chiefs, the Saints, the Bucks, the Patriots even necessarily, Lamar Jackson cannot play unless his team's leading. The team is built to be leading. If the Ravens have a lead, it's over, right? They will run the ball, they'll run you out, they'll tie you out, they'll extend the clock, have long possessions, all this stuff, and eventually someone will break free. And again, I'm not saying Lamar Jackson is bad. He deserved every vote for MVP last year. But what did I say coming into this year? Lamar Jackson has to take another step as a passer because people are going to figure him out and people are going to get a lead on him and he cannot come back. The Chiefs went up and he could not come back. It was 34-20. It felt like a blowout. Seriously, it felt like a blowout. And this Ravens team is the most talented team in the league. 100% the best roster. But 10 out of 10 times, the Chiefs will beat the Ravens. And they will beat them again if they meet in the playoffs. Because Lamar Jackson is not polished enough as a passer to go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. Lamar Jackson wasn't last year polished enough as a passer to go toe-to-toe with Ryan Tannehill. I think he is this year. I think he's made some improvements. He looks like he's throwing the ball better. But at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is always going to beat Lamar Jackson. And the Chiefs are always going to beat the Ravens because the Chiefs get out ahead and the Ravens can't catch up. Their style of play can't catch up. And it can't be quick enough. If you get a lead on the Ravens, it's over. It's over. I'm not saying a lead like 7-0 right off the bat, of course. But if you get a double-digit lead on the Ravens, if you go up 10, if you go up 14, Patrick Mahomes came back down from 24-0 like that. The Ravens cannot do that. They cannot. So again, I view Lamar Jackson sort of as the James Harden of the NFL. I think he'll be great in the regular season. He'll probably be a multiple-time MVP winner. He'll probably be an offensive player of the year winner multiple times. And I'm sure he'll get to a lot of, first rounds, a lot of playoff games, a lot of division wins, everything like that. But when it comes to the AFC Championship, you got to go play Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. You can't win. And he won't win. And that is just a hard truth for the Ravens fans to have. And there's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that can't play Patrick Mahomes, and I'm going to get into them in a minute. But I think we're starting to see something that we saw with Brady Manning. Manning was incredible, could do everything right, and Brady still beat him. Lamar Jackson is incredible, can do everything right, and Mahomes is still going to beat him. Now, talking about Kansas City, I think Kansas City is going to be a dynasty, man. Every time I watch Patrick Mahomes, it looks like he's getting better. I don't know how it's possible. But every game Patrick Mahomes gets to, he's always better the next game than he was before. He's always making better reads. He's always making crazier throws, and he's always winning more games. Patrick Mahomes is undefeated in September. 32-0. So crazy. I can't even do any, I can't think of anything with Patrick Mahomes. He's quite literally maybe the most talented player to ever throw a football, and he's quite literally on the path to become the greatest of all time. He is. I understand Brady has 6 championships. Absolutely incredible. Greatest team sport athlete of all time, in my opinion. But Patrick Mahomes is currently on the path where he's going to challenge Brady for that GOAT title. He just is. I think he's going to win the Super Bowl again this year. Again, every game Patrick Mahomes plays, they're better. The Chiefs, Hill is locked for long term. Andy Reid locked up long term. Patrick Mahomes locked up long term. Chris Jones locked up long term. Travis Kelce locked up long term. Clyde Edwards-Helaire locked up long term because of his rookie contract. He's only in year 1 of a 5-year deal, technically. Who is stopping the Kansas City Chiefs? Who is out-coaching Andy Reid? Who is stopping Patrick Mahomes? Nobody. And I really do believe, again, just another game against the league's best defense, against the league's best roster, against a Super Bowl winning head coach John Harbaugh, against the former league MVP Lamar Jackson. Patrick Mahomes dominated from start to finish on the road Monday Night Football. And a game that meant way more for the Ravens than it did for the Chiefs. Meant way more to the Ravens than it meant to the Chiefs. He dominated. It was a 14-point blowout, seriously. The score doesn't show. It was an absolute blowout. And the Chiefs' defense looked great against Lamar, and I think we're probably going to see this again in the AFC Championship, and I think we'll see the same result. I don't think anybody's stopping the Chiefs, and I certainly don't think the Ravens are. Let me know what you guys think about my comparison between Lamar Jackson and James Harden. I think Lamar Jackson's he's just the James Harden of the NFL. I don't think he's going to win a lot of playoff games. I don't think he is. I don't know if he's ever going to win a championship. It's just how I view it. And I'm a big Lamar fan. I was a fan of him coming out of college. If you knew me back then, I would have told you that Lamar Jackson would absolutely play quarterback in the NFL. I didn't think he had to change to receiver or anything like that. And I think he would play this exact type of style of football he's playing now. I just don't think this style and this play can beat Kansas City. It can't beat Patrick Mahomes. In the year of the air raid, in the era of the air raid offense in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes is the ultimate air raid quarterback. He's what Dan Marino was supposed to be. Seriously. Not that Dan Marino wasn't great, but I'm talking about the championships, the winning, the consistently good front office, right? If you gave Dan Marino the front office, the coach, the roster every single year, right, that's what Patrick Mahomes is getting. And that's what the results will come. Patrick Mahomes is going to win a minimum of 3 championships. Maybe more. A minimum of 3 championships Patrick Mahomes will win. And I think he'll probably win this year, and I think they might win back-to-back. That's just how I view it. Let me know what you guys think about the Chiefs, and again, that Lamar Jackson, James Harden comparison. That is going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Before I let you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Again, you want those alerts, those notifications, so you can be one of the first people to listen to a new episode and release it. Also, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general, and follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, we'd love to interact with you guys more on there. Again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Do not forget to follow us on all of those platforms. Again, I have been your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.